So today I'm going to restore this dashboard. Like all Mercedes, it has some nasty cracks all around because of the sun baking on it. So I already prepared this dashboard. With that I mean I've taken out all the parts on it, the air pods, taken out all the screws, dashboards and everything to prepare the dashboard for the filling of the cracks. For that I'm using a Dremel tool with a small bit in it. I'll be using this to kind of drill out or at least smooth the crack out, and then I will use some regular fast glue to seal the crack so it doesn't go any further. I'll prepare and come back with you with the result. So this is how it looks like prepared, where all the cracks have been dremeled out. And the reason why you do this and not just start filling in the cracks is because when the dashboard cracks, it cracks open so it stands up. Now if you would fill it, it would fill up like this and you would always see it. Now if you Dremel it out the way I've done it there, you fill it with glue and then you fill the crack, then it's smooth and straight and you won't see that there was a crack before, and it looks a little bit daunting. But this is the best way to do it and to make sure that it doesn't crack again. What I always do is I go a little bit further than where the crack ends, just to make sure that the crack doesn't go any further. But this is the result so far, and I'll go back to the next step and I'll come back to you. You can see here where the super glue immediately falls into the cracks where it's very dry and it gets dark instantly. So a few examples here of where I've put the first super glue on. You have to do that a few times though. You know, at the end you want to fill up the cracks completely with super glue, and the best glue to use would be a super glue on gel basis. I don't have that right here, but it has a little bit more power to fill in the gaps. Because of COVID, I can't go to the shops, so I have to do with what I have, but regular super glue would work just fine. Just it needs a few tries to get the same effect. So next step is, when the super glue dries, is to sand off the edges. I use a regular water-based 400 grit paper, and once you've sanded down the edges, you want to rough up the area around it, and for that I'm using a 1000 grit paper, soft pad, just to make it a little bit easier. And this is what you'll end up with, ready to start filling the cracks. So for this I'm using a Future Furniture Clinic repair kit. So everything you need is in there. In terms of contents, there's the heavy filler. In case you're doing leather, there's a glue with a canvas patch, and the tools required to fix it, like a scalpel, sandpaper, tweezers, and instructions. This is a very good piece of kit, and it'll do you just fine to repair maybe 5 or 6 of these dashboards with one kit. I think I paid about 15 euros for this leather repair kit. I'll start with the next step and I'll show you. Before I do so, also from Furniture Clinic, I have this leather ultra clean, and I just spray it on the dashboard and wipe it down with a rag that is lint free, and then I'll apply the heavy duty filler. At this stage you can see that I already made a few passes with the heavy duty filler to fill in the cracks. This is an example here where you can actually see that the crack has been filled in completely, and in this case I only need one really thin layer to kind of make this complete. On other spaces, especially if you look here, these are the more difficult ones. I may need a few passes here before I get it clean. The secret to this is that you do many layers, but really thin. You spread it out really thin, maybe even like this here on the edge. The reason why you do that is because, like you see, it's like a paste, and it needs some time to dry. And I usually leave it to dry for about 6 to 8 hours, which makes it hard enough to sand down. I just use my hand, no sanding blocks or anything, and I apply a new layer. And once I applied it, I used the heat gun there to kind of warm it up a little bit, and then let it air dry for the rest of it. Now you can imagine that you'll fill in the cracks the way they're filled in now, but the dashboard has structure, and you won't replicate it if you fill it in like a large area, because every layer will make it a little bit larger so you have a straight edge. What you will do is that this is in the Dutch language, but it's called brandspiritus, and what actually does, you put it on a piece of paper, and you kind of dabble a little bit on the filler, which makes it immediately soft. And the reason why you do that is because you just use a piece of leather or even sky leather, and you press it on there after you made it soft with the brandspiritus, and you can use an iron, or something to do iron the laundry with. You press it on there, and the heat will transfer the structure of the leather patch onto the heavy duty filler. Once you let it dry and you paint it with leather paint, again, many thin layers, you will build up the structure anyway. And done right, you won't see it at all. Maybe if someone points it out to you, but in most cases you'll be able to repair it in a way that will be absolutely invisible. Now I will continue to do the last few layers up until the final result, and I'll come back to you. So at this stage I have sanded down all the cracks there. I did about 4 or 5 layers of the heavy duty filler and sanded it down to a semi-smooth finish. My next step will be to use this 1000 grit soft pad sponge, sanding sponge, and the solvent. What I will do, actually, with the solvent, I will wet down the sandpaper, and I will sand it down even further. The solvent will make the heavy duty filler a bit softer. It will allow you to sand it down more smooth. And once you've done that, you'll go and do the stamping as I mentioned earlier. At this point I've stamped the cracks in the heavy duty filler, and I've sanded down the whole dashboard with a 1000 grit. My next step will be to clean, degrease, clean, and mix up the paint in a paint gun with a compressor and stop painting the first layers. Again, same as the filler, many layers but very thin, which means that I personally spray on a very low pressure. I have a HVLP gun which you would use to paint the car, but I use it at 1 bar pressure, and the feed screw almost screwed in completely, which gives a little bit of a texture to the leather paint that you're going to spray on it, which fills in any small imperfections as well. I'll do a few coats and come back to you with the result. So excuse the mess on my workbench, but just wanted to take a few seconds here to explain the paint that I'm using. This is leather paint. It's called Navy Blue from Furniture Clinic, which is a dead ringer for the Mercedes-Benz blue. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's a 3-in-1, which means that the primer, the color, and the gloss is incorporated in one paint. I have the ultra flat because it's a dashboard. Obviously you don't want it reflect in your windshield, and it's low traffic, meaning it's not like a seat where you would perhaps consider a separate primer, separate color, and a separate finishing layer on the top of a dashboard. It's not necessary. I've never done it. And it makes the process much easier because it's only one layer to paint instead of 3. I have a mixing cup here. Really depending on your paint gun though, but I do like to thin it out a little bit. 1 to 3, meaning in this case I have 75 ml of paint and 25 ml of water because it's water based, obviously. And it will go through a strainer into the paint gun, which this is an oldie. It's been used a lot, but you know it's used for painting furniture. Certainly isn't suitable for cars anymore, but an old paint gun will do just fine for your dashboard. In this case, HVLP, like I said before, with a 1.5 tip on a low pressure setting, 1 bar. And the feed screw almost all the way in, so that there's only very limited amount of paint coming out, and the fan wide open, the most open as possible. And I do usually paint a layer, then take the paint gun on around 210 degree setting if you have one that is adjustable. And I dry the paint off between layers. It usually takes no longer than a few minutes. It's tacky, and once it's tacky, you can put on the next layer. So pretty much in 30 minutes, you'll paint the dashboard in 5 or 6 different layers. It should be more than sufficient. I'll paint a few layers and come back. So at this stage, I have painted a few layers on it. You can already see that it's drying to a nice, even, flat blue. Before I started painting this dashboard was 50 shades of blue. Because of the sun, the top was very light, the bottom was very dark, and because the glove box is actually made out of different material, that had another color as well, the same as the speaker covers over there. You can see some of my repairs. Now this is, I would say, the first coat. There is some imperfections here that you can see this here where it didn't sand it down completely, but that's not a disaster. What you do, you just take your sanding paper again, you smooth it out, and you do a spot repair, same as you would do with a car. But in general, I'm quite happy with the result. It's still a little bit on the glossy side, but you're supposed to let it dry for about 24 hours before you actually touch it. And in that time, it will actually flatten down quite a bit. It's the closest I got to the OEM color without custom blending it. And even the ones that I did blend custom, they didn't come as close to this as this one. And you can buy it by the liter off the shelf, and it's so very close that Even if you do maybe one panel, let's say you buy a black door card or a tan door card, if you would only paint that one door card and the rest of your interior is in good shape, you would be impossible to tell the difference, so close it is. A camera may pick it up in an odd occasion, but with the naked eye it's almost impossible to see. So I'll sand it down further and give it a few more coats, and when I'm ready to put it back in the car, I'll show you the end result.